are in Gig Harbor and you have been searching for a hormone specialist for menopause, I want you to stay with me for the next few minutes because this video is going to save you a lot of time and a lot of frustrating appointments. You are exhausted in a way that sleep does not fix. You are anxious and you cannot tell why. You used to feel sharp and motivated, and now you are white knuckling your way through the day. You have probably already been to your regular doctor. They ran some labs, told you everything looked normal, maybe suggested antidepressants, and sent you home. And you left knowing something was still wrong. Here is what is actually happening. Menopause is not a single event. It is a years-long shift in your hormone levels that starts in your late 30s or early 40s, long before most women expect it. This phase is called perimenopause, and it can last anywhere from 4 to 12 years before your period actually stops. During that time, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone are all declining, not steadily, erratically. They spike and drop in ways that affect your brain, your sleep, your metabolism, your mood, your joints, and your libido. Every single one of these things is connected to hormones. So when you feel like your brain stopped working, that is not a mental health problem. When you cannot lose weight no matter what you eat, that is not a willpower problem. When you have zero interest in sex and you feel guilty about it, that is not a relationship problem. These are hormone problems, and they have solutions. The reason most women go undiagnosed or undertreated for years is simple. The standard lab ranges that most doctors use are built to detect disease, not to optimize health. A woman can be nowhere near her optimal hormone levels and still fall inside the so-called normal range. Her doctor looks at the number, sees it is not flagged, and tells her she is fine. She is not fine. She is just not sick enough for the standard test to catch it. Here is what a thorough hormone workup actually involves. The first thing is a full panel of labs that goes beyond what most standard appointments order. That means estradiol, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, cortisol, thyroid function, fasting insulin, and a full metabolic panel. Every single one of those numbers tells you something. Together, they tell you the entire story. The second thing is a body composition assessment, not just your weight, your actual muscle mass, your body fat percentage, and your visceral fat. Visceral fat is the fat that wraps around your organs and drives inflammation, insulin resistance, and a long list of symptoms that look exactly like hormone decline. You cannot treat what you have not measured. The third thing is a conversation that actually takes time. I spend a full appointment just listening before I suggest anything. When did your symptoms start? How is your sleep, your energy across the day, your stress load, your gut, your history? Because hormone optimization is not a one-size protocol. The right approach for you depends on the full picture, not just 2 or 3 labs. Then we talk about treatment options: bioidentical hormone therapy, pellet therapy, lifestyle changes, targeted supplementation. The right combination depends on where your levels are, what your history looks like, and what your goals are. And then we monitor closely. Labs every few months, dose adjustments when needed, direct access to me when something shifts, because getting the starting dose right is step 1. Managing it over time is the actual work. So let me tell you about a recent patient. She's 45 years old, and actually I knew her from church, and she came up to me and said, "Hey, I'm just not feeling myself. I want to come see you." So we sat down, we had an hour-long appointment, and we first reviewed her entire medical history, which fairly healthy, works out 3 times a week, really watches her macros, is raising a young family, and in a thriving marriage. But she came in complaining of chronic fatigue, lacking motivation of getting out of bed in the morning, loves her family to death, but really struggling to get her kids to practice throughout the day without feeling low on energy. And at the end of the day, her libido was in the toilet. Even though she loved her husband, she was feeling very guilty about having a declined sexual relationship with her husband. We opted to start with basic hormone panel, which includes basic lab values, looks for vitamin D deficiencies, looks for thyroid issues, and then, of course, the sex hormones, total and free testosterone, her estradiol. She was still having cycles, so she did not correlate this to obvious hormone disruption. And then we revisited her labs and her values in 2 weeks. We sat in my office and she said, I got online, I saw my labs, they all looked normal. So you're probably not going to do anything for me, right? And I said, that is so far from the truth. We went through and her vitamin D was 36, normal range 30 to 100. I want her closer to 80 to 90 on her vitamin D. So right out the gates, we got her on vitamin D supplementation. This is going to help her with energy, immunity, bone protection, and even protect against cancers later in life. The next thing we looked at was her thyroid issue. Again, normal, but I was specifically looking at her free T3. This is the actual active hormone that your thyroid uses, and hers was again normal at 2.5, but she could actually be thriving at a 3 or a 4. So we discussed possibly introducing some natural thyroid optimization medication to help with her difficulty losing weight and chronic fatigue. Then we got to her hormones. Now she's having monthly cycles. Her estrogen and FSH were where I would expect them to be. However, we looked at her total testosterone, how much she makes, and her free testosterone, how much does she convert to use? These were again on the low normal per the lab. But once I explained to her the optimum and the therapeutic levels that we were going for, she was shocked at how much improvement she could actually see. We opted to start with pellet therapy in just testosterone right out the gates. We treated her and she came back 3 months later. We had already repeated her blood work and saw that we got her levels to a therapeutic level. She came back thrilled that her relationship with her husband was thriving. Her libido was back where it was in her 30s. Her energy and motivation in the morning were significantly improved, and she felt she could take on the day. She was really thankful too that we talked a little bit about faith and using that as our motivation to really steward the bodies that God has given us. So we were really able to connect on the physical, the emotional, and spiritual levels to her care. She's thrilled. I see her in church and we high five and just thank the Lord that we were able to sit down, talk about her needs, and really help her in her health journey. If you were in Gig Harbor and what I just described sounds like your life, come in and let's talk. The first step is a consultation where we go through your full history and your labs together. The link is below. You have been patient long enough. Let's find out what is actually going on.